group, also known as MOPAG. Welcome to our July 11th meeting. Today we are going to host a county council candidate forum, and we have at least 5 of the 7 people who are running for county council signed up to speak this afternoon. I hope you can all hear me. Would everybody sort of shake their heads up and down or wave a hand and let me know that you can? I'm not seeing very much in the way of affirmation. Okay, I'm seeing some. What I'm going to ask this afternoon is that you basically, if you're not speaking, that you keep yourself muted. So each of the candidates will have an opportunity to speak for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll have some questions for them. If you have questions, please type them into chat, and Steve Reed, our co-host, will read them to the candidates. At the end of the meeting, we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves about whether or not to endorse in these county council races, and also whether or not to endorse Medicaid expansion and a couple of other candidates. So stick around for that discussion, please. I'd like to start off with a treasurer's report from our MOPAG treasurer, Marty Walsh. Marty, would you unmute yourself?
I did, didn't I? Am I
Yes.
unmuted? Okay. Yeah, the June 1st, we had $756.43. And with collecting dues from 2 people and a library rental return, we ended up July 1 with $806.83.
Thank you, Marty. Okay. I think the ground rules are pretty obvious. We are going to start off with the 4th District County Council race, in which there are 2 candidates who are here today, the incumbent, Rochelle Walton Gray, and her opponent, Shalonda Webb. So I'm going to ask County Councilwoman Rochelle Walton Gray to unmute herself at this point and to address us.
Yes, good afternoon. I appreciate
Good afternoon.
Hey. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm just going to start off. I, of course, was a state rep elected in 2008, and was elected to the council in 2016. So I have a previous progressive voting record and actions that I have taken throughout the years to promote progressive Democrats. Started off, even though I have been progressive in my political arena, I have also been progressive prior to that. And when I was attending college, I helped to form our African American Student Union program there at UMSL. I wholeheartedly support the issues that you have listed on your website and the need to expand the rights of certain marginalized groups. I 100% supported and voted for progressive legislation while serving in the legislature. I attended and participated in various meetings and rallies that were held primarily in Jefferson City. And currently and in the past, I have been endorsed by several progressive organizations such as the National Women's Political Caucus. I was a member while in Jefferson City of the Progressive Caucus, which was headed by State Rep Stacey Newman. And I worked closely with her. And I have to say, to her credit, I was able to gain a wealth of knowledge and got a lot of good advice from Representative Newman. More recently, she and I discussed and we addressed the unlawful arrest of the peaceful protesters these last few years since I've been on the county council. So we did a support letter and a resolution about that. I did have an extensive tenure in the legislature with a lot of legislation, but I think I'll start because of time since I've been on the county council. I had several progressive ordinances and resolutions. Co-sponsored a gun control bill that was highly promoted, and it was we had a big press conference about it. The gun control bill, it had to do with those persons who were charged with domestic violence or had a restraining order against them, and the need to probably take their if they had any guns, and that was just about saving lives of their partners. Recently, I had the opportunity to support Councilwoman Clancy's resolution in recognition of Gay Pride Month. I wholeheartedly co-sponsored, meaning from its initial stage, affordable housing trust fund resolution. And unfortunately, being at the local level, I can't do certain things that I could at the state level, but at the state level, it wasn't so effective anyway because we were in the minority. So I feel like here I'm able to have more influence. So we also had some interest in the shackling of pregnant women over in Justice Center. So we worked on getting that removed. I espouse all of your civil liberty rights. I didn't see anything that I disagree with. Amendment 2 campaign, I did have some meetings about this. So like you said, you're going to talk about that later. Participated in meetings regarding police reform. And I sponsored legislation while in the House, as well as a resolution in the council to increase police training, sensitivity training, racial bias training, de-escalation, and cultural competency. And one thing about that is the police department, the chief, the people, the leadership continually do say that they have training, which they do, but it's not adequate. They have some training is just module, computer training, not one-on-one, not in class. So that's been important. Recently, I've had the opportunity to research and study, not extensively, but I've read some support papers about the fact that racism is continuing a public health crisis. And that's something that these past few months have come to the forefront of our community and the nation. And the council has attempted to somewhat address this, but my four colleagues more so, we have again done a lot of done some resolutions and had meetings to try to see what we can do about that. And of course, that's ongoing. We also had legislation regarding equal pay. Equal pay for men and women should be paid the same. There should not be a differentiation when you're doing the same job, but especially more so at the county where we have our influence. We have tried to address that, and more so another issue is violence against women and others, and that's something else that has again has been at the forefront these past few months, not just uh, um, in relationships, but again with what's going on with the police officers. And not to say I don't support our police officers, but there is some need for change, as I'm sure most people would agree with. And I'm trying to see what time I'm at. Okay. In the past, I on the floor has spoken against any bills that sought to further limit a woman's right to choose. I spoke against voter suppression. And speaking of which, earlier, I did have some bills which would support curriculum in our education system to address date rape and domestic violence. So I did file some legislation to ask DESE to include that in their curriculum at the high school level. I was a member of the Renewable Energy Committee and caucus, so I saw that was one of the things that was important to you as well. Again, gun control. And see how much time I have. So I could go on and on. I have lots of legislation that I supported and filed. I wholeheartedly support not repealing DACA. We did have students from the University of Missouri who came and spoke with us about that, and to the students that wanted to remain enrolled, and people, there were those who were trying to say that they should not be students, and I don't think that was fair or right. Tax incentives for big business, I was against. Now, when we do give tax incentives, I think it is very important that they not be issued or those tax incentives be repealed if after a certain period of time that business has not shown that they did what they said they were going to do. And that has to be put into the initial um, not contract, but the initial proposal before we issue any type of tax incentives or tax credits. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions.
I have some questions I'm going to be asking all of the candidates. And the first one is, what are the key responsibilities of a county council member? And is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
One of our most important duties is we have to represent the unincorporated areas. And I happen to have one of the largest areas of unincorporated St. Louis County. So those persons don't have a mayor, they don't have council people. So we represent them more closely, pardon me, than our other constituents. And what was the second part of your question? Oh, redistrict. Go ahead and say it.
Is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
Oh, most definitely. Coming from the 4th district or representing the 4th district, and what we've seen in what's happened with COVID, with coronavirus, we have seen that disproportionately the people who live in the 4th County Council District have been affected more negatively. And that is somewhat, of course, due to lack of resources in this area. Healthcare access, which is not, of course, a county issue, but we can, through our resources and our connections and our relationships, try to mend that and change that. Unfortunately, it has taken something like this to bring it to the forefront of the entire county. Of course, I already knew about it. I mean, I've been African American all my life, have relatives who have been affected disproportionately, but it has been brought to the attention of others. With my help, we have started having a great connection with the Hospital Association, county health departments, and various nonprofits. We are working diligently to address that. So that is most definitely something that is one of our top priorities. At least it's mine, should I say.
Okay. Okay. Next question. County Police Chief Mary Barton has said she does not believe there is systemic racism in the county police department. Do you agree with her?
Well, of course not. There is definitely some concerns with racism in the police department. I recently met with several African American police officers so I can get different perspectives on how they feel about that, because of course that's their job. They are there, they see what happens on a daily basis, where I'm on the outside looking in. So I thought it was very important that I speak with them to get their opinions, and which I've done prior a year or two ago as well. So when the MOU was presented to St. Louis County back in 2018, we met, and we've met several times since then, but more so since it's come back up again after the council met with the chief, it has been an issue. So yes, or no, I don't agree with her.
Okay. My third question is the construction code for new housing recently adopted in the county has been controversial, with environmentalists and the construction industry at odds over the code. What are your thoughts on the new code?
We are working on legislation to find a compromise because both sides do have good arguments, but I side on the EPA. I want us to have codes that are good for our economy and the atmosphere and people in general. So whatever we can do to make sure that the codes are up to EPA standards are my utmost priority, but we are trying to seek a compromise on that so that builders are not severely strained, but I think they do have to take some accountability.
Does the county police department have adequate structure in place for accountability? And if not, how would you change that?
Adequate structure. I would have to say probably not at this point. They had an extensive meeting on yesterday, the police commission. It was probably at least 2 hours long, where they are trying to restructure the police department. So I would have to say no. What was the second part of your question?
If they don't have adequate accountability, what would you do to change that?
Well, what I do, I would, of course, have to work. Unfortunately, let me just preface by saying the county council, due to our charter, has limited access to the police department. We have to work with the the commissioners, the police commission board. But I would do my best when we met with the police commissioners prior to them being appointed and prior to their appointment being approved by us. One of the things I told them that I wanted them to work independently of the police department and not feel accountable to the chief or police officers only, but to the community as well, take into account all positions before making decisions. In the past, and I spoke with the prior police board, 2 or 3 people, they would always vote for what the chief wanted. They felt like he had the best position for making decisions, and that most certainly was not true. But I would have to work diligently with them based upon what I just said to try to restructure the police department. But again, looks like they're moving towards that.
Okay, we have a little more flexibility with time because 2 of the candidates who said they would be here today have not appeared, and so there's time for a little bit more questioning. Steve, do you want to unmute and ask the question from chat?
Yeah. What are your plans for repairing the dysfunctional and inequitable affordable housing program?
Well, I mentioned earlier, we already, Councilwoman Clancy and I have all, and I'm not sure that could mean that question really could have 2 inferences. So I'm not really positive what they're getting at, but Councilwoman Clancy and I both worked on an affordable housing fund plan through the housing department. We had to tweak it quite a bit because it was not acceptable to several people on the council. So we tweaked it and we did a great job with making that affordable housing plan more acceptable for those who live far, far north or West County who really didn't want to see an affordable housing plan. But the plan also supports greatly the funding that's coming to support those areas that are in need.
Okay, a second chat question we have, and this is intended for all candidates if we have the time, Susan. The county depends on sales tax revenue to pay for many programs, including the bulk of police cost. How will you maintain county programs in light of sales tax erosion caused by the virus lockdown and restrictions?
Well, of course, that's going to be very, very difficult. We've spoken with the county executive about the fact that sales taxes are going to be down, which consequently our sales tax revenue, of course, has decreased. Really, at this point, I can't give any specifics due to the fact that it's been only a recent thing that has happened. However, the budget committee, we will begin to work diligently towards, and we started talking about this after the last budget, the end of 2019 going into 2020. We've always had the intention to try to revamp the budget and find an area through the county executive's office where we can come up with some additional revenue. Of course, once again, the pandemic has halted a lot of our progress on many plans that I had for different projects. But we will get back on track, most definitely, and work on trying to find additional revenue. Again, it's going to be much more difficult than we had intended due to sales tax revenue being even lower. We don't want to increase property taxes. People really won't like that. But we're going to work on that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do appreciate you guys for having me. Been most informative.
And we appreciate you finding the time to appear with us today. By the way, the meeting is being broadcast as well on Facebook Live and will be posted to our website and to Facebook afterwards. So more people will have an opportunity to hear what you've had to say this afternoon before the primary in August.
Well, perfect.
Now, you're welcome. I'd like to ask you, thank you for muting yourself. And now if Shalonda Webb, who is also running for County Council in the 4th District, would unmute herself, would be happy to listen to you. Tell us why you're running for office.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Susan and Steve, for organizing and making sure we had this opportunity to share what our thoughts on our platform are for North County. Again, I am Shalonda Webb. I am a 22-year resident of North County. I am a wife, a mother of 3 sons, a software engineer at the Boeing Company for 22 years and in leadership currently. My initial purpose of running for a county council is because of the concerns that's in our communities. Not overwhelmingly big in politics, but I've always been very engaged in my community. And so when I have neighbors who have concerns about debris not being picked up, or when they're concerns about dilapidated residents in the community, or when they're concerned about how our community is being policed and the amount of crime that's going on in our communities, all of these are the concerns that I've been attentive to and aware of. And so those are the things that have driven me to come forth and not just be a worker bee behind the scenes, but step up and be in the forefront to give our county another opportunity for excellent leadership. One of the greater things that are in my mind as I walk through the community and been able to share with the residents is some of the speeding that goes on. And so I'm doing grassroots types of engagement with the community and what they're talking about at their kitchen tables concerning North County. They are concerned about the speeding, the crime. They're concerned about the lack of businesses that's in North County. I've shared before that we are concerned about businesses that are left the area, but North County is holding the bag. And what are we going to do about this? We need responsibility and accountability at every level, from a business perspective for those rundown properties and also in residential. And when we talk about the affordable housing and we talk about other programs in place to bring housing to certain neighborhoods, we can't bring those houses to these neighborhoods without making sure there's accountability. So there's accountability from the residence level of upkeep and being responsible neighbors. There's responsibility at the homeowners or the affordable programs to make sure that there's accountability there, that they're going back and making sure that those residents have the resources and the information needed to be responsible as property renters or owners in some cases. And then at the county level, we cannot walk away and say that the county is not responsible as well. There needs to be accessibility and response from our county when there are issues about dumping in the community, when there's issues about speeding in our community, when there's issues about neighborhood crime. And so again, these are the topics that's brought me to the forefront to be a candidate for county council. I am also engaged with numerous opportunities through my employer and in my community. When you talk about your progressive platform and the things that are important to your organization, I have not been an elected official before, but I have been engaged in the community from the aspects of even at my current employer at the Boeing Company, where we're now facilitating race relation conversations. And one of the questions you had was, is there systemic racism in the police department? I would have to say that there's systemic racism in our country. So the police department is not shielded from that. And so there needs to be active, not just conversations, but active activities and programs in place to address some of these concerns, whether it's training, whether it's knowledge and sharing of more information. But yes, I do believe that needs to be addressed as well. I'm also engaged with youth organizations throughout the community. So I hear the cry of the youth when they say they have nothing to do in North County. There is nothing for them active and engaged and constructive for them to do in North County. And a mother who's raised 3 young men, I know firsthand how I would travel to South County, Incredible Pizza, or Bounce You, or Spider, all of those activities because they're not available in our communities. And that is something we need to concern. We can't say that the youth are idle and not making a difference when we've not given them those positive outlets. And if you don't have, you're not a parent that have those resources to be able to bring your kids to other areas to participate in, then your kids lack, and that should not be the case either. So all of those things are issues that are before parents and teachers and business owners that are here in North County that I would like to help address.
Thank you for that opening statement. Back to our questions.
Yes,
What are the key responsibilities of a county council member, and is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
So the first half of the question is, what are responsibilities? I believe when we step up and want to get engaged in our community and serve in a leadership position, the first thing we must be is remember that we are an advocate, that we are the voice of our community. So you need to provide accessibility, you need to provide feedback, you need to be consistent in providing constructive forms to have feedback. So one thing that I really want to focus on is bringing back consistent town hall meetings, not very frequent consistent town hall meetings. So all of the things, all of the programs that's being discussed, our community has a chance to get back engaged. In addition to that, I believe it's responsibility to make sure that the voice of the people is not just heard, but acted upon. One thing that I'm always champion for our community is that the concern of North County is that we are not proactive and intentional about its future. So as the county council, you need to be county council leader. You need to be creating coalitions. You need to be devising plans, long-range business plans for within 5 to 20 years of how we're going to rebrand and revitalize North County. Those are the responsibilities of the county council as a leader and a voice for the people. The second part of the question is, do you believe, is it the responsibility of the county members to make sure that equity funding is disseminated not equally in my book, but according to what the needs are. And so, yes, I do agree that is the responsibility. And you must speak up and not be passive about it. You must let it be known that your community has been disproportionated, impacted by COVID or whatever the issue may be. And that funds should be allocated accordingly. If you have a ditch that's 9 feet deep and you give everybody 4 feet of dirt to fill that deep. If you have a community that only needs 3 feet and you gave them 4, what is that value there? If you have a community that has a 9-foot deep ditch and you gave them 4, they're still not going to meet the needs of their community. So what I'm trying to get at here is, as a voice for your community, when you see those inequities, you have to speak up. You can't be passive and go along to get along to keep everyone calm. You need to speak up for the people that you wanted to represent, that you wanted to advocate for. And I believe all of that is the responsibility of the county council: accessibility, transparency, oversight, and constant communication with your community.
Okay. I'd like to ask you now about the housing code. The construction code for new housing recently adopted by the county has been controversial, with environmentalists and the construction industry at odds over the code. What are your thoughts on the new code?
So I believe that those codes need to be evaluated case by case. I know from knowledge of being shared with that the board has come together with new codes to be reviewed that's never been reviewed at this point. And so there needs to be a time set aside to review the new codes that was brought forth and then assess them case by case. There needs to be compromise. I'm in agreement that there needs to be compromise. There is not going to be a broad stroke that takes everything, but we need to look at those codes. What we don't want to do is price our community out of being able to be homeowners. And so we got to make sure that these codes are responsible, because we want to be environmentally responsible and have a community here for our great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. But at the same time, in the current state, we want to make sure that our communities can afford these new codes and that they will be a benefit to the community.
Okay. Does the county police department have adequate structure in place for accountability? And if not, what would you do about that?
So I believe that there is not adequate accountability. Unfortunately, I don't have direct access to the police boards or have their ear. But what I can say from a member of the community and witnessing some of the things that goes on, there needs to be more structure and accountability. What would I do differently? The commission and the community board, empower them, give them evidence of how you support them. In addition to that, I think there needs to be evaluation that's just not done within the board, within the police department, but across both the board and the police department. There needs to always be oversight. There cannot be any symptom of someone not being able to be accountable. And so when I say that, I'm specifically referring to if your board finds something that's wrong and they give an action for the police to follow, there needs to be accountability of if they don't pursue a certain recommendation, what was be the reasoning why they don't pursue that. And then weigh in the pros and cons of how that impacts our community. So yes, there needs to be more structure in the police department. We need to give the community, restore that trust between the community and the police department. And that's gonna take more than just the board, but that's gonna take actions within the police department itself and getting back in front of the community to rebuild that trust.
Okay. I'd like to remind our members that if you have a question you'd like to ask, type it into chat, and my co-chair, Steve Reed, will read it to the candidates. Also, there are some people who are participating in the meeting today who I know are not MOPAG members or are new to our meetings. If you would like to join our mailing list, you can send your email address to us at MOPAG, MOPAGSTL @gmail.com, and we will keep you informed about future meetings. That's MOPAG, MOPAGSTL @gmail.com. Steve, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the chat questions?
Yeah, well, I have the same questions as we had before. What are your plans for repairing the dysfunctional and inequitable affordable housing program?
So I briefly mentioned this before. A lot of the dysfunctional and
Inequitable.
inequitable activities that some have observed in the housing, I need to get more familiar with them. I'm not going to pretend that I know all of this, but what I do know is that there is certain communities that have affordable housing has gone into those communities and it hasn't given the return that was expected. And so we need to make sure that once there is responsibility from the program itself to make sure those residents that are engaged in that program have some responsibility and consequences for not upholding those responsibilities. At the same time, the county needs to hold the program accountable as well to ensure that those who participate in the program is also doing as they should be doing as residents. And so at each level, there needs to be, once again, the word accountability and responsibility for the residents, the program, and oversight from the council. And I would like to see that the council give those reports on a more regular basis on how the program is doing as well.
And the other question is about the county depends on sales tax revenue to pay for many programs. How would you maintain these programs in light of sales tax erosion caused by the coronavirus?
So the situation with the coronavirus has only exacerbated what was already underlying in North County. We don't have a long-range business plan for its future. We need to come up with diversifying the businesses in North County to get different streams of revenue. So sales tax isn't our only option. What I also would like to see is to find a way to promote minority business and women-owned businesses and giving them some investment in the community as well. There needs to be in our county council a vision and a plan so when we have crises such as COVID, that we're not reactive, but we're proactive. And diversifying our businesses and diversifying those that participate in the county and getting different streams of revenue for the county will help prevent what we're going to go through right now. Well, the fact that we don't have enough sales tax to cover all the programs that we need. Although all of those programs are needed for our community to adequately serve our community. I'm sorry, Steve, was there more?
Okay, I guess that's basically all the questions that we have for you, Ms. Webb. And I'd like to thank you for participating in our council forum today and wish you well with your campaign as I do your opponent, Rochelle Walton Gray. The voters are going to have a tough choice in your district.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I want to thank you once again, Susan and Steve, for allowing me to be on the platform today and sharing some of my priorities and thoughts and visions for North County. I also want to encourage anyone, if you want to learn more, to reach out to me via my website at shalondawebb.com or visit me on Facebook at Shalonda Webb for North County. In addition to that, you can always reach me via email at info@shalondawebb.com. I want to hear your concerns. I want to be able to give you respond responsibly and make sure that I'm informed when I make decisions and share feedback with you. So again, thank you everyone for this opportunity.
Okay, you're very welcome. Would you repeat your website? I think you may have frozen up and I'm not sure everybody heard it.
So again, I can find out more information or reach me at shalondawebb.com. So that's www.shalondawebb.com.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the 6th district, we were supposed to have Bob Burns, but he does not seem to have registered. So, Alex, I know you weren't supposed to 20, about 10 minutes early. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Would you unmute yourself?
I think I am. Am I good? You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, can hear you.
Perfect.
Alex is running in the 6th district.
Yeah. First off, I
Take
just
it
want
away, Alex.
Thank you. First off, I just want to thank the Missouri Progressive Action Group for hosting this. I think it's very important for folks to hear from the candidates, especially in this COVID crisis where it has been challenging to reach voters. I think we're all feeling that. I think for the average citizen, they're like, great, I don't have to hear all these politicians all the time. It must be a nice break. But for us, we want to try to connect, and these opportunities are great. So I want to thank you. I also want to thank everybody on this Zoom call. Being engaged in politics, especially during a COVID crisis, is extremely important. The way that we get out of this crisis and we start recovering is by the ballot box, is voting for the right people that are here to make change. And so first off, I want to say thank you to you guys and for hosting this event. So for the folks that don't know me, I've never run for a political office before. I'm kind of a newcomer to politics in the sense of running. I've worked on a lot of campaigns, but I'm going to kind of give a little information about who I am, where I come from, and talk a little bit about the race, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that the other candidates have answered. So like I said, my name is Alex Lange. I have lived in St. Louis County my whole life. I have 2 little ones at home. I'm actually expecting a 3rd in November, which is going to be really tricky with this COVID stuff. My wife is a little freaked out, and I am a little bit too, but we're anxious for the newborn to get here, and we're excited about growing our family. I've lived in South County about 5 years. I primarily grew up most of my life in the West County area, and I had a lot of really good opportunities growing up, and I want to make sure that those same opportunities are shared by the families down here in South County. You know, I'm a union representative with United Food and Commercial Workers Local 655. But before I got there, I actually was a clerk with Schnucks. I started with them in 2009, really started grinding my teeth and understanding what it means to work hard every day. And we were, you know, organized by the UFCW Local 655. They were our representation. So I really started understanding what a union can do for workers. Really inspired me. And now 8 years later, I've been on staff with Local 655 as a union representative, where every day I get to fight on behalf of the frontline workers that we all call heroes now. It's very humbling for me. I did work at Schnucks. I don't get to call myself a hero. I'm not out there every day, but I am talking to them, helping them, fighting on their behalf for their safety and what they deserve. And you know, a shameless plug here, but everybody wear your mask for these folks. They are risking their life to feed us, and I want to make sure that that continues. And I appreciate people that do that. So like I said, I've been a union representative. I fight for working class families every day, and being a union representative, that to me is what it's all about, is fighting for folks and making sure that they have a voice when most of the time they don't feel that they do have one. My area down here in the 6th District is primarily unincorporated area. There's a few municipalities, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that don't feel like they have a voice. And by being the councilman down here, they will have that voice. They will have somebody that is going to fight for them. They are going to have somebody that is going to continue to listen. And I think, you know, speaking at one of the questions you are going to ask, is that to me is what this position is. It's not about being a politician that, you know, there's pay to play, which will not happen under my regime. But at the end of the day, it's about listening to constituents. Nobody knows their areas or their communities better than the folks that live there. I can pretend to think I have all the best ideas and that I know everything, but I really don't. At the end of the day, it's going to come from them. And I want to be that voice at the council to speak on their behalf. And I'm excited for that opportunity. I bring a different perspective, a new voice to the council, especially down here in the 6th area. We really need to work on flipping this seat. It's important that we continue to do the good things that the council is doing. And behind Chairwoman Lisa Clancy, who I am endorsed by, which I think is very important, because I think she recognized that I'm going to work hard, that I'm going to fight for the issues that matter for people in my 6th District and the county across the way. You know, the status quo has to go. That has been what's been going on down here in South County, and we have to fix that. I am really frustrated with seeing the county and people that are in politics down in this area showing up in the newspaper for the wrong reasons. I mean, that was one major reason that I stepped into this race, is when you look at the people that are involved down here, there is no place for hatred, for racism. We have to condemn that type of behavior. And it's all about uniting St. Louis County and not dividing it. And that's what I'm going to bring to the table. I want to talk a little bit about some other endorsements that I have. Like I said, I did mention Lisa Clancy has given me her endorsement, but UFCW 655, the union that I'm with, also the international union that I'm a member of, St. Louis Labor Council, which represents all the unions, has endorsed me. SEIU, the service employees union that have had their fights trying to get $15 and the union, you guys have seen those fights, and I support those efforts. The labor's 110, 42, and also the carpenters union. Just to mention a few, I have others that continue to roll in, but I'm ready to work hard and fight, not just for union members, because that's a big part, because they've helped build the 6th district down here, but for seniors and for children and making sure they have a strong education. Right now, there's a lot of question marks about sending kids back to school. The one thing I haven't heard is people mentioning teachers. Like these teachers that are going to put themselves on the line to teach our children, no one seems to be talking about them. And from that labor background that I have, it's like that was kind of my first question. But I am a dad, so I'm also very worried about our children going back into these buildings and making sure that everyone's safe and trying to find the right recipe to make that happen. You know, I want every family in South County to be able to raise their family, stay here, and not have to go somewhere else and leave. I mean, we're losing a lot of, especially folks my age, millennials and younger, to Louisville, Indianapolis. They are leaving the area, which I've lived my whole life and I absolutely love, but we need to work hard to get it back. We need to develop the 6th district and have it continue to grow. Another big important part is having a large voter turnout this election. We all know how important these elections are. We see what's happening at the federal level and how we don't have true leadership. But the most important thing is local elections, and we all have the power to change that and to fix St. Louis and to make sure it's on the right pathway. So I'm encouraged, but I also think having someone young on the ballot in November to try to get Jill Shoup elected, to try to get Nicole Galloway elected is going to be important to drive that group that sometimes doesn't show up because they don't feel heard. But having someone like myself on the ballot will definitely help in that regard. There's a lot of questions that you guys have. I want to answer them. I want to try to be as transparent as I can, because that is one huge staple that the St. Louis County Council needs to have. They need to have transparency, accountability, and oversight. Those 3 things are similar in nature, but we have to make sure that when we're talking about taxpayer money and we're talking about, you know, things that are important to us, that it is being handled correctly. And that's what I want to bring to the council, is somebody that, you know, at the end of the day, works hard to protect my members every single day. And now I want to protect and fight for all the residents of the 6th district and continue that onto the St. Louis County as a whole. So that's kind of my little speech. I do appreciate what you guys are doing here, and I'd be happy to answer some of those questions you had.
Thank you. First question again is, what are the key responsibilities of a county council member, and is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
Right. So some of the responsibilities, I think if we pay attention to the county council meetings, we see kind of the Tuesday responsibilities where you go and you listen to people. But that should be happening every single day. That needs to be happening besides just these public forums where people are asking questions. But you have to be somebody in the community that you represent, that you want to hear from people, that you're not afraid to hear from them. Because I will tell you, as a candidate, and I think I do everything right, I think every decision I make, I'm like, this is great. You still hear negative feedback from people, but you can't turn that aside and say, oh, their vote doesn't count, or their voice doesn't matter. It does. And we need to take that information that they're giving and try to figure out how we can work together. So I think as a council person, our first job is to be someone that listens and to be proactive to the needs and the wants of our community, and to be a leader. And a leader means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But for me, it's about having that transparency, that loyalty, and that passion to help people. And that's what I think a council person is supposed to be, and the equity across the county. I think that is important. I think that we are all in this together. This isn't necessarily, I'm running for the 6th district and all I care about is the 6th district. Like I said, I've lived in West County, I lived in Maryland Heights, I've lived across the county, and we are only as good as, you know, the weakest district. And if we have a weak district or somebody that needs support, we need to make sure that they're getting it, because we all are connected in this county.
Okay. County Police Chief Mary Barton has said she does not believe there is systemic racism in the county police department. Do you agree with her?
So that question has obviously had a lot of people on either side. I'll be honest with you. I think there absolutely is bad actors in the police department. And, you know, being a union representative, I represent members that are wrong. And I go into grievance meetings and I tell them, I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, you've done something wrong here. It's not my job to say, okay, you've done something wrong. Let's figure out a way to help you out and to make sure that you continue to keep your job. Or, but sometimes the facts are the facts. And I would disagree with her position on that there is not racism, because I think there's racism everywhere. And that's a huge problem that we have to continue to have conversations. We have to continue to have community policing. We have to listen. We have to work well together. But I absolutely believe there's bad actors. And I think we have to improve the training of the police officers. Body cameras, I know that's been a conversation. Those are important because it's accountability on both sides. I'm held to a very high accountability standard as a union representative. The Department of Labor watches over us to make sure that we're doing everything right by our members that pay my salary. At the end of the day, the police have the same responsibility, and that's to the residents. And that's kind of my opinion on that very important question.
Okay. The construction code for new housing recently adopted by the county has been controversial, with environmentalists and the construction industry at odds over the code. What are your thoughts on the new code?
So my opinion is we have one planet to work with. We have seen the planet recently spiral in many different directions: global warming, the coronavirus. There's so many different things, but we get one planet. So we have to be cognizant of that when it comes to EPA regulations and making sure homes are the best that they can be for that planet. But, and there is a but there, we need to partner with the construction companies, the union workers that work on these houses, and the families that are wishing to buy homes in the area, because we don't want to get in a situation where it makes it unaffordable for people to live in our area. But we also need to find that compromise where they can have safe houses and houses that are not going to negatively impact the planet just because we're trying to save a couple dollars. But it is a compromise. And that is one thing I'm very passionate about in this campaign is, once again, I don't know everything. I don't pretend to, but having those conversations with the construction companies, having those conversations with the environmentalists that really care. When you're only hearing one side of an argument and you believe everything that one side says, it's very hard to listen to the other side. But if you bring them together, we can find a middle ground on most issues. And this is one I think we can.
Okay. Steve, do you want to unmute and ask some chat questions?
What are your plans for repairing the dysfunctional and inequitable affordable housing program?
So especially down here in the 6th district, the affordable housing always is an issue. There's definitely the two sides of this. I personally think that the affordable housing is important, and it will help grow our communities. Wages have been stagnant. I know that the county has done a good job of trying to raise the minimum wage, but there's still a lot of folks out there that don't agree with trying to have people earn a good living to afford homes in our areas. You know, this is a situation that, as somebody that would have power on the council and somebody that is a representative of the council, would have to work to try to make sure that people can afford to live here, and property values at the same time. Because I know that's, when you talk affordable housing, the other side is, it's so much about property values, and they want to continue to have strong property values and strong schools. those things can go hand in hand. Once again, there is a middle ground. It doesn't have to be affordable housing automatically means that property values are going down or schools are going to get worse. I want to make sure that the community that I'm a resident in, that the people can come here from other different areas, and we are growing a community. My street, just to give you an idea, very diverse down here in South County. We have a very different folks come from South City. They've moved here. They want a better life. They want to put their children in good schools. And thankfully, the Melville School District passed a tax increase a few years back to try to grow our schools to get us to a point where our property values are going up. But we cannot be there with a stop sign up and say, hey, unless you can afford these outrageous home costs, you can't live here. That is not what we should be trying to do. Affordable housing is important, and we have to look at ways that it works for the county as a whole.
And then the second question is, the county depends on sales tax revenue to pay for programs like the police department. How do you maintain those programs in light of what the coronavirus is doing to sales tax?
Yeah, I really like this question. As I've run through this election campaign, I would call it, you get a lot of the similar questions. This sales tax one, I think, is really important that I don't really hear asked that much. So I'm actually, I was glad to hear it. I think the sales tax is really important. I've been very impressed by businesses in the area adapting and changing to different ways of trying to change their business model, offering carryout, doing drinks that you can take home, and they're really trying their best to try and help us with the sales tax and continue. I mean, online shopping has continued to grow. It's probably grown even more during this time with everything going on. We have to work together with the businesses in the area and have some sort of task force when I'm elected to sit down and say, hey, we have to look at ways to help them continue to allow them to grow and not be at the same time where that's going to create some sort of exploitative factor on the workers. Being a union representative, my first instinct is always protecting our workers. But I do have a really good relationship with the companies we work with. And I think that's important when we're talking the sales tax, is making sure that we allow these companies to grow and to continue to innovate, but at the same time, not exploit the people that work for them. Anything else?
Is that it, Steve, for questions?
Yeah, that's all we have there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. You mind if I give a quick plug before I shut off here?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay. So my campaign, you can find a lot of information, and I'll throw it down in the chat so you guys can see it. Everyone can look at it, but it's alexlange.stl.com. There is an E in Lang. Make sure you don't forget that, but you can find more of my platform, some of my COVID recovery information, everything about my campaign is on there. All the social media sources, it's Alex Lange STL. I would appreciate telling your friends about my campaign if you're interested. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure we get folks elected that are going to make positive change. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
And again, you were running against Bob Burns and Venki Palaman. They both had an opportunity to appear here today and couldn't make it for some reason. And then whoever wins the August primary will be going up against Ernie Tragus.
That is correct. Yep.
All right. Our schedule is a little bit off because Mr. Burns and Mr. Palaman didn't show up. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule. And the next person is, we're going to move to the 2nd district, and Kelli Dunaway, who is the incumbent. Kelli, are you ready for us?
I'm ready. Are you ready for me?
Yes, we are.
Great. Susan, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I see a lot of really familiar names and faces on the screen, so it's really nice to see you all. It's been too long. I'm Councilwoman Kelli Dunaway. I'm single mom to a soon-to-be 1st grader and 3rd grader, a lifelong Democrat, and I fight every day to see our values take hold in our laws and policies against a status quo that is hanging on for dear life. When I was elected last year, I became a member of the historic Women Democratic Majority on the St. Louis County Council, and we have prioritized working families, the environment, and accountability and transparency in government. In the last year, I fought to ensure that environmental efficiency and safety standards were baked into the St. Louis County building codes. So I'm so delighted. I'm going to have a more in-depth question about that shortly. We passed an affordable housing trust fund to give money to developers, programs, and local governments seeking to expand affordable housing. We raised the minimum wage to $15 on St. Louis County contracts. We passed a red flag law to keep concealed guns out of the hands of perpetrators of intimate violence. Many of our progressive laws and resolutions were passed 4-3, squeaking by because my swing seat is held by a real progressive Democrat fighting hard for our values. Our legislative priorities, as you all know, have taken a back seat to COVID-19. And since then, we've been working really hard to ensure that our $173.5 million in CARES money is going to those most in need. You may recall the controversy over our decision earlier this year to give the money to the county executive. And we did that for 2 reasons. First, election year shenanigans have been in the way of good policy and relationships all year long. And we feared that our colleagues on the right would hold up funding at every step. I still believe that to be the truth. Second, we were assured that our priorities were the county executive's priorities. I chair the council's oversight committee, and I'm proud of the work we are doing every week. If we look at our CARES Act budget as a moral document, you will see that the vast majority of the money is going into the communities most in need and to the people most in need. We have $17.5 million set aside to small business owners in St. Louis County. We have more than $10 million set aside for housing and utility assistance, $2.6 million for food assistance, $5.9 million for child care assistance, and $1 million to care for the elderly and homebound. We are making sure that this money is getting where it needs to go. And now, with demands for police reform and our collective need to rip systemic racism out of not just our government and police, but society as a whole, we need our progressive majority more than ever. We are reimagining public safety. We're taking a fresh look at the Ferguson Commission report and other studies that have come out since. We're looking to see what's working in other communities and police departments around the nation. And we are working to ensure that right here in St. Louis County, we lead our region and beyond in what's possible. I also want to talk for a minute about some of the endorsements that I have received. I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, NARAL, the National Women's Political Caucus, the St. Louis Labor Council, which represents, as Alex said earlier, most of the labor unions around. I've been endorsed by the building trades, by the SEIU, by the UAW, by the laborers. I have been endorsed by almost all of the labor unions around. I've also got the endorsement of Indivisible St. Louis, the Sierra Club, who I worked very closely with on that building codes update. And we aren't finished collecting them yet. Most of my state reps have also endorsed me, as have a number of other local representatives and the other 3 Democrats on the county council, as well as Dr. Page himself. So that's my introduction. I'm happy to take your questions, and let me know what you want to hear from me. I think you're on mute, Susan.
Sorry about that. Little technical glitch over here.
No worries.
All right. First question, what are the key responsibilities of a county council member? Is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
I'll answer number 2 first. Absolutely, it is part of the job. In my particular district, which includes Hazelwood and Florissant to the north, down through Bridgeton, St. Anne, and then at the bottom of the district, we've got Creve Coeur, Maryland Heights, Overland, and then a little bit of Chesterfield. So it's a very disparate district. And I think that it's really important that we are always looking to ensure that those areas most in need are getting a fair share of our time and our resources. To answer question number one, what are the responsibilities of a county council member? For me, that is listening to my constituents. Marilyn Beck is my legislative assistant, and we get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, and we listen to everyone. We read all the emails, we respond to them. It's important to us to make sure that we're listening to all sides of an issue before we make a decision. And at the end of the day, St. Louis County is the economic engine of the state of Missouri. And our responsibilities are to ensure that we don't just remain the economic engine, but that we continue to drive even harder and even faster and even farther so that we can carry the rest of the state with us. And I think that inherent in that is creative problem solving skills, making sure that we run tight meetings. We have meetings every Tuesday, but we also have a lot of other hearings and things in between. And I think it's really important that we are able to work closely with everyone in our districts and everyone else in St. Louis County to ensure that we are doing what's right for the county as a whole and our districts.
Okay. Second question has to do again with County Police Chief Mary Barton, who has said that she does not believe there is systemic racism in the county police department. Do you agree with her?
I do not agree with her at all. In fact, that was my question that she was answering, because I asked that question because I wanted to see what our starting point is. I have plans. I want to rip systemic racism out of policing. I want to reimagine the way we deliver public safety services, and knowing that we're starting with a chief that doesn't see the primary barrier to progress is a real problem for us. And as Councilwoman Gray already mentioned earlier, we on the council, we don't have the power to hire and fire the police chief, but we do have control over their budget, and there is a lot that we can do to ensure that changes are made that go deep and that happen quickly so that we can start to see some of that progress we're hoping for.
Okay. The construction code for new housing recently adopted by the county has been controversial, with environmentalists and the construction industry at odds over the code. What are your thoughts on the new code?
So this was the first piece of legislation that I picked up with, in my short tenure on the county council. And I picked this up because the process through which the 2015 building codes were developed was one-sided. It was made by developers and builders, and they didn't really include the voices of the environmentalists. The Sierra Club was invited to attend one meeting at the very end of the process. And then those 2015 building codes went and sat in a drawer in Steve Stinger's office until he was no longer the county executive. So when I picked these building codes up, I realized that running with them as they were written would exclude every environmental safety and efficiency standard that I wanted to see baked into the codes. So I sat down with the Sierra Club. I also sat down with the home builders and a number of other people who were involved. I collected a lot of data. I did my own research. I listened to a lot of people. And despite the claims made by the home builders that this would make the cost of new homes unaffordable for a number of people, we found in the math that the offset in monthly savings and more efficient utility bills would offset the difference in the mortgage payment amortized over 30 years. So I felt very confident pushing pretty hard to include as much of the recommended environmental safety and efficiency standards as possible. We did, however, compromise. The home builders made some good arguments about how there were some things that were just going to be a whole lot more complicated to implement. And so we did. We stepped back and I feel that nobody left that negotiation happy, which is probably the best outcome for everybody. None of us got everything we wanted, but I do believe, and I believe we made some real progress to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. And I'll tell you, the 2021 building codes are going to be the negotiation for the 2021 building codes should begin later this year. And I plan to be very involved in that process and to ensure that environmental groups, including the Sierra Club, has a seat at that table.
Great.
But to answer your question specifically, sorry, Susan, I don't think they went far enough. I think we have a lot more work to do, but it was a good start.
Great. Okay. Does the county police department have adequate structure in place for accountability? If not, how would you change that if you can?
So I would argue that there is not. At least, you know, there might be something written on paper that says that there is accountability, but we're not really seeing that play out. I think one of the biggest issues that we have is that the police union is representing police officers who have been accused of misconduct. I would like to see an independent third party step into those situations so that even if the outcome is the same at the end, just that view, the way it looks, that that the police are protecting their own over everybody else's interests, can at least be worked on. I also think that we need to reward police officers who turn in the bad behavior that they're seeing in their colleagues. And additionally, I really sincerely believe that we are asking police to respond to issues for which they do not have the training, the knowledge, the empathy, or the experience to deal with. And we need to expand how we deliver public safety. And I think that means either partnering with organizations who are already out in the community, providing social services, so that police aren't responding to homelessness, to drug addiction, to domestic violence, and other issues that often escalate and end in police violence. I think there's a lot we can do right out of the gate, but it's going to take four progressives on the county council to get it done.
Okay. Steve, would you like to unmute and ask any
Yes.
chat questions?
Yeah, Kelly, how do you prioritize the distribution of resources when distributing the resources of the county?
Well, I'm for equity. I think that we need to spend more resources in underserved areas. We are not seeing enough of that happen right now, and it perpetuates the disadvantages that people in those communities continue to feel. These food deserts are there because we aren't investing in the right kind of development in those areas. People don't have affordable housing because we are disproportionately investing elsewhere. So for me, a primary and the top of my objectives list is to ensure that we are investing as much as we can in those underserved communities, while also helping other communities like my own that are already doing fine continue to do so.
And in part, perhaps you just answered the next question in part. What are your plans for repairing the dysfunctional affordable housing program?
I think we need to invest more in our new Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This way we're investing in studies, we're investing in development. We are doing more to find where and how we can build more affordable housing and provide more housing security to those disadvantaged communities.
And finally, the county depends on sales tax revenue for its programs. With the coronavirus eroding the sales tax, how do we maintain county programs?
That, as Alex said, it's a great question and one we don't get often. But what I would like to see more than trying to find new sources of revenue, though I would like to and will, I think a Wayfair tax is a great idea. Let's make sure that we're earning some tax revenue on those internet sales that Alex was talking about earlier. But what I would like to see is an innovation in the way we deliver services. In St. Louis County, the vast majority of our employees are on the verge of retirement or will retire in the next 10 years. Instead of replacing these people and just throwing the same old job description out, I think there is a great way to find new systems, whether they're electronic or combining jobs. I'm not looking to overwork or exploit our workers, but I do think that we really need to be creative to find new ways to deliver services that are going to be more efficient and more cost effective. And I work in the private sector for my 9 to 5, and I see a lot of ways that we can bring some of the efficiency systems that I use every day in the private sector into the public sector, so that we are increasing the services that we provide at a much lower cost. Especially now, I think this is the great impetus we needed to actually really go down this path and be smart and creative and innovative with the way we spend our money.
Okay, thank you, Susan. That's all the chat questions.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And the next candidate and the last one today will be Barry Glantz. Barry, would you kindly unmute yourself?
I have. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Susan, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you all for being here and giving me a few minutes to introduce myself. My name is Barry Glantz. I'm currently the mayor of Creve Coeur and a candidate for the St. Louis County Council in the 2nd District. For 28 years, I have served my community in numerous capacities. And as such, my municipal experience is unmatched in the August 4th primary election. I've been mayor for 9 years. Prior to that, I served on the Creve Coeur Planning and Zoning Commission for 8 years. And prior to that, I was elected to the Creve Coeur City Council for also 8 years. In these kind of difficult times, our community is in need of leaders who guide with a steady hand, safeguarding all that's good, advocating for that which needs improvement, and collaborating rather than being divisive in order to achieve successful outcomes to very complex issues. We often hear elected leaders promising and showing how they will fight for us. I actually really dislike that verbiage. Fighting implies that there's a winner and a loser. But in St. Louis County and actually across the state and across the country, we must find ways actually to work together, which means talking as well as listening and taking the necessary and appropriate actions in order to reach a place of consensus. So that allows everybody to thrive. As the mayor of Creve Coeur, I'm most proud of my efforts and subsequent results in fostering a genuine sense of community. This was achieved by being accessible to my constituents in the community, appointing a wide variety of citizens to various committees, honoring all voices in the community to ensure that people actually feel heard, and taking into account truths about our city that may have been difficult to hear, while also assuming the responsibility to address these concerns with an honest intent for positive change. My goal then in running for the District 2 seat is to broaden my reach and to help generate these same realizations in a spirit of collaboration within St. Louis County government. I am the candidate who can truly say I have and shall continue to. And that's why I'm endorsed by most every mayor and a lot of the elected council officials through the municipalities through the 2nd County Council District. We seem to be at a crossroads in St. Louis County. And as a member of the county council, I will make a concerted effort to advance economic development, promote public safety, strengthen diversity, and actually uphold transparency in government that I know that we all seek. And with that, I'm sure that you have a number of questions for me. I could go on and on. You have a lot of good speakers today, but I'll open it up to questions that you all may have. And again, I sincerely thank you for the time today to present and introduce myself to you.
Thank you, Barry. You've heard these questions before,
Sure.
but here they are for you now. What are the key responsibilities of a county council member? And is a concern for equity in the distribution of county resources part of the job?
I think one of the key responsibility of a county council member, and quite honestly, any elected official, is to listen. I think too often when people get elected to office, they very quickly come to think that they know everything. I've spent a great deal of my community civic service time listening to my constituents, making sure that all stakeholders' opinions are valued. I host every month, I host a coffee with the mayor. We have done that in person, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we still do that, but we do that by Zoom. So I think the primary responsibility is to listen. I think that distributing funds is of paramount importance to do equitably. And that's why I was really surprised that the county council voted to give the county executive sole responsibility of the $173.5 million COVID funds. No matter anybody's good intentions, our government was built, our system of governance was built on checks and balances. And no matter anybody's good intentions, that should never be relinquished.
Okay. Second question again, having to do with the county police chief, Mary Barton, who said she does not believe there is systemic racism in the county police department. Do you agree with her?
I don't know how to answer that question, quite honestly, from a county's perspective, because I'm not as familiar with the county police department. I will tell you that in our own police, and by the way, I will tell you this: most politicians will answer any question, and I've noticed that a lot of them don't even answer questions. They talk around issues. But I will tell you, I don't know enough about Mary Barton and St. Louis County police policies. But I will tell you that in Creve Coeur, we hold our police department, our police chief, and our command staff to very, very high standards and accountability. And if anybody in our police department made a statement like that, I would want substantive backup to ensure that that is the case. As an elected representative of St. Louis County Council or as the mayor of Creve Coeur, I would never tolerate racism in any police department function.
Does the county police department have adequate structure in place for accountability? And if not, how would you change that?
Again, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the county police department. I know that they operate actually outside of the purview of the county executive and the county council by the police board. So I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer that question.
Okay. And then the construction code for new housing recently adopted by the county has been controversial, with environmentalists and the construction industry at odds over the code. What are your thoughts on the new code?
So that's an issue that I'm very familiar with, because in my real life, I'm an architect and I deal with building codes every single day. And full disclosure, full transparency, I sit on the St. Louis County Building Commission. I believe that the building codes are very, very important to protect life, health, safety. As such, having up-to-date building codes is critically important. And St. Louis County's codes needed to be updated. To say that the Sierra Club was not invited to meetings about the building code is a bit disingenuous, because all meetings, at least in Creve Coeur, and I assume in St. Louis County, are open to the public, so anybody can attend those. I happen to believe that building codes should protect life, health, and safety. Energy codes should be considered as an option that lets homeowners decide whether they want to invest extra dollars. And let's make no doubt about it, the energy code adds cost, upfront costs to any construction project. The payoff on that is a hotly debated issue. And, you know, I've heard candidates today even talk about housing affordability. I don't understand how you can add extended costs to building codes at the front end and connect the dots to affordable housing. But I believe that the energy codes should be individual options and not part of the life safety building codes.
Okay. I see one of the chat questions was sent to me instead of to Steve, so I'm going to read it. Here's a question. We are a democratic organization. How do we know you will uphold democratic values and not just join the conservative trio on the county council?
You know, it's interesting. I've been asked this question all through my candidacy. As you know, municipal governance is a nonpartisan elected position. This is the first time that I've had to declare a party affiliation for political service. To run a campaign and the only issue that people can question me about is party affiliation is truthfully pathetic. Yes, I am running as a Democrat because I align with democratic values. That said, and I'm going to be fully honest and transparent here, I am not going to just follow blindly. I'm going to think through issues, think for myself, take input from a wide variety of sources and stakeholders in the community, and vote for what's best for St. Louis County.
Okay.
If
Steve,
that
do you
doesn't
want-
make me a Democrat, then so be it. But you guys, quite honestly, it's with 3 weeks left in this election, and that's the only issue that anybody can have with me is really a pretty sad state of affairs.
all I'm doing is reading the questions.
I understand, and I apologize. I'm not trying to take you to task.
No.
It just gets tiresome. Instead of talking about issues that can improve St. Louis County, we're talking about party affiliation.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Steve,
chat questions
wanna
again. Chat questions, what are your plans for repairing the dysfunctional affordable housing program?
I think the affordable housing program is quite dysfunctional, and I think that the public housing trust fund is a good start. I think it needs to there needs to be someone to advocate for good public-private partnership to revitalize the program and actually find ways to make this a usable program for people who really need it, and then put some teeth into it and with accountability.
And then the next chat question is about the county dependence on sales tax revenue to pay for its programs. What happens now with the erosion of the sales tax with the coronavirus?
So that's a great question, because we're facing the same issue in Creve Coeur. What we have done is first of all, we sent a letter to the state of Missouri. You know, the state of Missouri is one of only 2 states that has not passed the Wayfair legislation to tax internet sales, which puts our brick and mortar retailers at a huge disadvantage to online retailers. That's not necessarily a Creve Coeur issue or a St. Louis County issue. It's a state issue, but we need to advocate to level that playing field. That will bring more revenue in to all of our communities. In Creve Coeur, we have also decided that we will defer or delay a number of our infrastructure programs, and we're constantly looking for grants and opportunities to cost share with other communities, and I think it would be no different in St. Louis County as well.
Okay, Susan, that's all the chat questions that we have.
You're muted.
Susan, you have to unmute.
got it, finally. I'm not the most technologically competent person. I apologize there. It's 3 o'clock, and at this point, I would like to thank all the candidates who've appeared at our meeting today and allowed us to hear from them. and ask you to leave the meeting because we need to have a conversation about whether or not, and if we are, then who to endorse in your races. And we also have to discuss some other business. So thank you, Barry. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Alex. And goodbye. And we hope to see you in the future at MOPAG meetings.
Thanks so
You're
much,
always
Susan,
welcome.
Steve, everybody. It was so great to see you, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone. Have a good day.